Interpreters are now needed in many situations, which has created a boom in the demand for interpreting. I should point out that most interpreting is done on site. That is, unlike translation, interpreting cannot be outsourced to another country where the cost of labor is less. Because interpreters provide communication between individuals in critical situations, such as hospitals, the demand for competency among interpreters will increase concomitant with the number of interpreters. In past times, a few universities, select elite universities, produced an adequate supply of interpreters for diplomacy, professional conferences, and international business. That supply is no longer adequate. As a result, bilinguals who may be heritage speakers of a non-English language are being pressed into service. I think you all know what a heritage speaker is. That is someone who speaks the language, may have grown up speaking the language in their home, but they were never educated in the language. So in a sense, they're not literate in the language, and they lack in vocabulary and expressive ability. That supply of interpreters turned out by those few elite universities is no longer adequate. As a result, bilinguals who may be heritage speakers of a non-English language are being pressed into service. The situation calls for training programs and tests of interpreting skills for different situations in the community. Law, health, government offices, and schools are a few examples of the specializations that have emerged or will emerge in interpreting, and these will require training programs and examinations of specific language skills for specific types of interpreting work. Over-the-phone interpreting or telephonic interpreting will also continue to increase as a way to obtain the services of an interpreter on demand, and the buyers of this service will want to see evidence that the workers are certified through a formal assessment. All of this portends for more language training programs and more tests of language skills. International migration will also create changes in the economy of each country. We will see more international relationships in business as some workers return to their mother country. We will see more international competition in every sector of the economy. This will not just affect manufacturing as it has in the past, but the provision of services as well. The reconciliation of most banking transactions now takes place in Asia, with local banks throughout the world merely serving as storefronts, a place where the bank can interact with the traditional customers in traditional facilities. However, the real banking, the real reconciliation is done in another part of the world. The movement of money takes place in another part of the world. This suggests increasingly complex demands on professionals and managers who have to work across national boundaries with a multilingual workforce and a multilingual clientele. Think of the doctor in an emergency room here, and there's no radiologist to interpret an x-ray or various sorts of tests that radiologists interpret. And so the test is conducted, but it's digitized immediately and sent to a radiologist in India, who then phones in and communicates with the doctor about what it says, or in China or wherever it might be. This situation is commonplace and will continue to become more commonplace. More and more things are being outsourced. Just about everything that could be outsourced will be outsourced eventually. The movement of less skilled workers from developed countries to more developed countries will also have effects. These workers usually arrive with less education but manage to find a place for themselves in their new country. Meanwhile, as traditional workers and managers grow older, they will retire and will need to be replaced in many cases by even better educated workers and managers. Yet there will be fewer of these well-educated managers because the educational level of the host country will be lower as a result of the arrival of so many less educated workers from other countries. The situation poses a challenge for planners, policymakers, and governments who want their country to remain competitive in the worldwide marketplace. Ethnic diversity will also pose a challenge. Multicultural societies will change the national identity of nations. More nations will be multi-ethnic, and this will pose a challenge to national cohesion and the traditional order. Ethnic group members will examine matters of equity across ethnic groups, making complaints and demanding access and equal outcomes. When these can't be obtained, then efforts will have to be made to ensure fairness in order to maintain peace within local and national borders. Well, what can we do about all of this? I think the first thing I would say is that we need to not, as language educators, not be as insular in the future as we may have been in the past. You know, if you look at the modern language department, for instance, which is a kind of collection of people from different countries, those departments are much happier when they're split up into different units, into different languages. That, of course, is indicative of what often happens in society. But we as language educators need to work together to continue to promote not our language, but foreign languages in general. It's commonplace for teachers of the major foreign languages to say, well, the other foreign languages are not important, and yet we know today that those are the languages that the government is spending literally maybe $1 billion or more on trying to teach them to Americans. When there are heritage speakers around that could be taught those languages, or those languages could be taught in the schools as children are growing up, and they could get educated in those languages. As a field, we're proponents of language teaching and language learning, but historically we have functioned as individual proponents and not as members of a group. We need to be more active in joining and supporting groups like the National Museum of Languages, where we can meet with others who have similar interests and understandings. We need to learn to collaborate with others. We tend to support our own unit, our own university, our own city, or our own state. We need to abandon this local, egocentric model in favor of collaboration, which will strengthen all of those personal units, be they our neighborhood, our school, our town, our county, our state. By collaborating with others around the world, we bring in business to our own community and strengthen our own community, surprisingly. Collaboration is really the key to the future in terms of business. However, in order to maximize our reach and our influence, we need to become more involved in public policy. It is here we have much to contribute as language educators to a multicultural society. We are both technicians and humanists. We are both scientists and sojourners. We bring with us knowledge of other countries, other languages, other cultures. We are comfortable in situations where most of our compatriots may not feel comfortable. Well, how can we maximize our influence? By continuing to support the role of language training, language testing, and language skills in a civil and successful society. We should get involved in public policy issues involving languages and cultures. We need to attend meetings of policy-oriented groups and write letters to public officials outlining reason and reasonable responses to public policy issues that involve languages and cultures. We need to publish our ideas in the popular press, not just academic journals that are not read by the public or by policymakers. We need to be available to the mass media, not just to each other. If we speak out for an organized, civil, and language-competent society, we will increase the prestige associated with having language skills. And this will allow us to reach our full potential as language professionals and as contributors to an organized civil society. Thank you.
Any questions?
Anyone have any questions that they want to ask? I think they want to see who won that silent auction.
We still got to wait for that.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
What do you anticipate a regression in that time? Right now we're on the upswing, but eventually there'll be a regression of some sort. How long does that take?
Well, it seems to be coming, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Both in this country and in Europe. But I think these are unstoppable forces. You're not going to. It's like taking candy away from a